Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Steve, and welcome to today's webinar. We're going to be looking at the first in a series of webinars regarding the FSM module. We've not really covered this at all in our webinars so far. So we're going to put together a series and look at the different elements of the FSM module in turn. Today, we're going to be looking at the support contract element of the FSM module, and that is essentially creating the contract for which all the other bits kind of link to. Okay, so there's a few ways of getting the contracts themselves into Prima, one of which being an import, the other of which is what we're going to do today, and that is creating the contract manually and then entering that into Prima. So like you've seen with creating anything in Prima, the new record is the start point. So I go into new record and I can see the third one down. We've got a support contract here. Click in the support contract, and as you guys would know now, you want to start something new, you can put some detail in around the customer, have a search by letter, and then I can choose a contract to a company to add the contract for. So I can choose the Beacon Hotel. And my reference in this instance is going to be machine contract. Sorry, typo. Machine contract for hotel. So this would be an overall description of what you are looking to put a support contract in the system for. You can assign it to a contact and you can assign it to a location. And I'll explain that bit shortly. So I create the contract. This is your start screen or home screen, if you like, for the contract when you come into it. And what it's asking you to do at the bottom section here is enter the lines. Now, when you're looking at support contracts and lines, what we're talking about here is generally a service, or in many cases, if you're using support contracts for MPS, it's the machine. So our customers would generally put a machine name in here. So if I drag one across and add it in as a line, so that yellow field, as you've seen before in Prima, it just means that you need to put some information in there before you save it. So I've got an Epsom workforce machine, and I'm going to add this as a line. Down the left hand side, I've got some details. Now these would be set in the admin to determine the kind of classification, if you like, of the contract. So what does that contract mean to you as a business? So you can group them, what type of contract it is, if you have dedicated response times around SLAs, then you can add those and set those up in the admin area. You can assign an engineer, so if I find myself as an example in here, I can assign myself, and then you can assign zones or areas to the machines as well. You can link products in terms of, for reference, if you've stored a product code in the system of this machine, then you could put that code in here. I can add serial numbers, so it might be the case that we have our own structure. So I've got an internal serial number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then on the machine itself there might be a manufacturer's serial number. So I can put that information in there as well, so you'll know and you can search on later down the line those serial numbers and know which machine is assigned to that customer, if you like. There's some contract values in here, and I'll come back to those later. But essentially what it means is if you're charging for that service, i.e. renting that machine to the customer, what does the value of the rental equate to in terms of the contract? So we'll come back to that bit in a sec. So I'll add it on without. And I'm just going to quickly add another machine on here as well. So if I just find another one and paste this in. So I can add another machine on here, and I can add the details in here. Now, for some of our customers, they would just use the support contract here to basically get the meter reading counters into the system, and then it would be a billing based on the meter readings. So we're going to cover meter readings in a separate session in more detail, but if it's just a quick thing you want to get set up, I'll show you here. So you just double click on the machine, and then you've got an option within the machine here to add the counter. Okay, so I can add a counter, and then it will give me the details, so descriptions, etc., pricing, nominals, classifications, etc. Like I say, we'll come back to that in a separate webinar, but just quickly, if you wanted to get that running, you can have a look in there yourselves and get and put that in. Okay, so that would be against each machine, and then there's a bit more detail that you can see within the line itself. Okay, so what generally happens is once you've created the contract, come back to the summary, we would go through a training process of our customers, and they would renew the contract. And what that basically means is, from Prima's point of view, in the renewal you can add the pricing information. So if I go into renewal mode and then I click load renewal, I get the contract in the state where I can set up the kind of details of the contract itself and the pricing association if this is going to be a service charge. So as you can see in this section in the header detail, I can add a start date, a renewal date, an expiry date. What we generally see here is our customers would mark the contract as open-ended. What that means is the expiry date doesn't kick in. The contract will just keep running until you archive it or change it. Okay, I can add a payment start date. So if the contract's due to start today and the first payment is due beginning of next month, I can say that. What's the payment frequency on this? So if they're renting the machine from you, do they pay monthly? Do they pay, and you'll see the options in here, is it a quarterly charge? And then for the contract itself, so if you've got multiple machines on here or you're putting multiple service lines onto the contract, what's the cumulative periodic charge that you want to add to that customer's contract? So for example, I've got 2 machines on my contract. They both are rented out at £50 a month. My payment value in the contract as a whole, i.e. what I'm going to be invoicing the customer as a standing charge, would be £100 a month. So in here I then get the option to update the payment description. So it defaults to tell you what the support contract number is, but if you want to modify this invoice description, what happens is you can put payment description for colour, work centre and the Oki machine, for example, on here, and then that will be the extended invoice description if you like when you go to complete your invoices. For the contract itself, you can add departments and classifications. So if you what our customers would generally do if they've got service contracts, etc., you might have a dedicated nominal that you want to attach to this stuff. So you might go into office supplies, whatever it is. How's it charged from a tax, and then you've got your cost center information if it applies to a particular cost center. So you've got a renewal value here, and what we tend to do in terms of the training and advising the customers here is over a 12-month period, what's the value of that contract. The renewal date will automatically adjust to the next 12 months. So the renewal value is 12 months worth of the payment value. So in this instance, we've got £100 a month times 12, which would be, it's a £1,200 contract. What you have below is a line's contract value. So that would basically be telling me that each contract line adds up to 1,200, and what you want to see is these two figures match. So if I save this line, what I would see here is I have a contract value for this line as 600 because it's £50 a month for that machine. and it would be £600. It's £50 a month for that machine. Okay, so it's a kind of checksum, if you like, that you're billing the customers based on the lines that you have on the contract. Below that, you've got some payment details. So we always leave the contracts, if you like, in advance payments, and then the invoicing period is how do you want to present that invoice to the customer in terms of when they receive it. So do you invoice them advance for the coming period? Do you invoice after the period is complete? So if you want to produce the invoice before the period that they're using, then you can put a minus figure in here. So 28 days before the payment date, that invoice will become available in your available lines to invoice the customer. Okay, so once you're happy with all the kind of the contract detail as such, you complete the renewal, and that contract would then be live, and that will be running until you change it. Okay, so back into the header detail. Now we're out of renewal mode. It would give me the information down the side here. So these bits where you see it blue are only editable once you're in the renewal mode. So it's telling me it's £100 a month contract. The next payment date is here. It's worth £1,200 a year to us. Here's the invoice description, and that contract is now running live. It's, like I say, it's pretty straightforward to set up. If you need to make changes to that contract at any point, you can come back into the renewal mode and then go through that process again, making sure that your lines value marry up. And when you complete that renewal, it will then put whatever changes you've made live, and that will be in the system until you change it again. Okay, so you can put, if you've got any notes, you can put some notes in here around the contract. So if you want to make anyone aware of a price increase and you want to see that in the lookup, you can make that. But just on that, we've put something in the latest release that will be coming out to customers soon. You can see this button here as price increases, and this is something that's been requested by our customers. And what it'll allow you to do is plan ahead in terms of your contracts and your meter readings. So we've got an option in here to create a price plan, and the price plan itself is set up in the admin, or you can do it manually and add the lines in here. But if I show you the price plan, it'll give you an idea of what it is. So if I create a price plan, what it's telling me is for the next 10 years, I'm going to determine what the price changes are on that customer's contract. So next year on the 9th it defaults to the 12 months down the line. So on the 9th of November 2019, I'm going to see a 5% increase on my contract and a 5% increase on the counter charges that I've got set. And once this is in place and you apply it, this is live on that customer's contract. So the price changes will automatically kick in on the next invoice relating to that customer's contract after that price increase date. So really allows you to plan ahead for any perceived changes or any agreed changes with your customer if they know they're going to have these staggered increases. So the price plan defaults to 10 because that's what's in the admin, but it might be for the next 3 years, for example, you only use 3 of the increases, but you can change the values in here. So really good. I mean, it kind of means if you know what these changes are going to be, you can just leave the contract running and you don't have to spend your time going in chopping and changing. So I'll just come out of there. And another thing we're working on here, and you'll see this if people use contracts already, might be new to you guys. Being able to, if I tick this option, being able to send the requests via email. So we'll cover this in more detail when we do the counter readings, but to explain what it is, a pre-populated email with a section for the customer to put in their reading will be sent out to the customer. They can reply with the pre-populated email, and then you can pick that up in Prima and enter your next reading dates in there. Okay. So there's all sorts of information, but essentially once you've done those setup pieces, which are, as you've seen, is relatively quick, the contract's there and it's live, and the invoicing kind of takes care of itself. So if I kind of show you that now, if I go into the Invoice Look Up, what happens is, based on your invoicing schedule that you set, on the dates that are the next payment date and the schedule on your contract, when you go to build your invoices, the contract lines will just appear in the system here for you to generate the contracts, and you can, as you normally would, highlight create invoices. Yeah. So if you're doing your normal billing, in terms of like your business supplies and stuff, you can exclude the support contracts until you want to go through those exclusively. So if you're doing both through Prima, you might want to exclude those. So you've got an option there. But if I just create the notes, then I'll build some invoices, and you'll see what it'll do is it'll put a reference on here, basically telling you that it links to a support contract. So if I open up one of these invoices, what happens is that payment invoice description that we set, that will be brought through into the invoice, and a system key will determine whether you want to include the period data in there as well, and it'll just append that period data so the customer's aware of what is the billing period of this invoice. And then, as you guys would do now, complete the invoices as normal, and then Prima jumps on to the next round of the billing on that support contract. Okay. So at any point in time, you can come back into the support contracts lookup, and we've added quite a few sections in here to help you drill down and find the information around the contracts. So if you use the groups, the types, the responses, you can search on those. If you contract descriptions, who the engineer is assigned to those contracts, who's in charge of those contracts, obviously the customer. When's the next renewal date? I can search and get the information around that. So I can bring my header information. I've got lots of information in here in the lookup. If I'm looking on renewal dates, I might want to go through and see I've got some customers' renewal dates coming up. I can go through those, have a look at the contract. Do I need to make any changes? And then I can do that and apply them. Okay. If the contract ends for whatever reason, you've just got the archive button at the top. That just removes all the pricing set up immediately and takes that contract offline. So there'll be no more invoices generated against that contract. And if you do need to contract that customer again, you just put on a new contract for that customer. Yeah. And that's pretty much it in terms of what I wanted to cover with you today. I said right at the beginning there is another way of getting the contracts into the system, and that's via an import template. You can contact the support team if you need a copy of that, but we will be covering that in a later webinar in the series, because we're going to be looking at the integration between Prima and the MPS product print audit, and what that means in terms of taking information from print audit, including the contract details, and having that information available in Prima. Really, really powerful tool, and if you guys already use print audit already, certainly give us a shout about the integration there, because we'll give you some information. Like I said, we're doing a new webinar. The next webinar we're going to do regarding the FSM is on meter readings, and this is your machines and the counters against them, and how to handle the billing, how to correct reads, and how to look at history against the reads, etc. Okay, and following that, we'll look at the call response. So the call response is your engineer call-outs, if you like, for your machines, requesting parts for the machines, and requesting service jobs on behalf of your customers. Okay, so that's it for the support contracts one today. If you've got any questions on it, we'll be hanging around for a few minutes and we can cover those as you need. Okay, thank you. See you next week.